What's going on, guys? I am Simple Simon. I'm your comic book noob, and welcome to the Noob Rebirth. That's right, it's new beginnings. Today's episode is actually something I've been wanting to do for quite some time. As you guys know, I am a noob to comic books. I've been into comics for still less than 2 years, so I don't really know anything. And I've always wanted to do a video which is kind of like a beginner's guide to comic books. So today's episode is going to be comic books for noobs. But before we get started, if you do enjoy this video, please give it a like. And if you're new to the channel, don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button. I'm here at Big City Comics. Let's do this. Alright guys, so I have with me today the Noobs mentor, Mark from Big City Comics. Say hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
I thought it'd be perfect to have you as part of this episode.
Social distance. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
I thought it'd be just really good to have you on this episode because obviously you owning a comic shop, I do notice you have probably a lot of noobs that come in and don't know where to start, right?
That's true.
So I've got a few topics that we're going to go through today. I'm going to get Mark to pretty much answer all of them, and carry this video for me.
Oh, pressure. Hey man, how you going?
I'm good.
Yeah, you look like you like comics. So you a new reader or you a collector?
So the first topic is the types of comic book readers and / collectors. In all your years of comic books, if you can explain, I guess, the different types of people that get into comics and how they collect. Because from like, obviously I know you've got your hardcore collectors, you've got your serious readers who really just read, they don't care about covers and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got the casual, like, I know a lot of people who aren't comic book people, and when they find out I'm into comic books, they say, oh, have you read this? Have you read that? Because they've read all the classics. And I'm normally like, Hush? What's Hush?
Oh! So that's just an example, alright? He still hasn't read Hush.
I've got so many single issues to get through. Anyway, tell us about the different types of readers and collectors.
Okay, so the difference between a reader would be the person who just wants to read good stories. So, you know, people come in and they want to read, or people come in and they want to collect. So most of the collectors that come into the store want to know what I've got in my back issues. They want to see, you know, maybe fill gaps in there. You know, so they've been collecting, most collectors have been collecting for a while. Everyone has their niche in collecting. Some will just collect all Spider-Man covers. Like yourself, you know, upside down kissing covers. You know what I mean? So everyone has their little niche. I mean, and the difference between a collector and a reader would just probably tend to go to a trade. And there's nothing wrong with that. And a collector will tend to get the single issue comics. You get a collector usually rings first to see if I have it in stock. If you've got this back issue, a reader usually just comes in and see what I have on the shelf. It's always the first question I ask when a customer comes into the store. What do you like to read? What are you into? Not everyone's into superheroes. So, you know, I always try to get as much information out of that person as much as I can, in comic book wise, of course.
So what type of comic collector are you, Mark?
Oh man, I'm both, man. I'm like, I collect store for story and I collect for character. And I'm stuck on Batman and Wolverine and Punisher. Been collecting them since I was a kid, so it's like a habit or second nature to me.
Yeah, well, because I guess the other thing is, like, I collect characters that I like. Well, I find once you've been in the game long enough, long-time comic book readers tend to go more for the writers than anything
Sometimes, yes and no. I mean, it's a bonus when you have a character written by a good writer. As I got older, I never was into a lot of indie comics.
And I'm starting to get into indie.
Yeah, and so now that I'm older, I'm starting to get into a lot of more indie stuff. At first, I was more about the art. You know, I have to like the art, but now it's, I don't mind it. You know, different art styles, sometimes they suit the story.
Yeah, that's true.
So I tend to now, I'm a bit more of a mature type of reader, whereas, yeah, or a collector, I suppose. I mean, I tend to read a lot more single issues than I do trades now. Yeah. Whereas when I didn't have a comic book store, I would flip between collecting and buying single issues and trades. So I'll give you an example. So I love the idea of what Jeff Johns was doing with Green Lantern. So instead of getting all the Green Lantern single issues, I bought the trades. Yeah. And I don't regret that.
I need to eventually hit up more trades. So obviously I'm a collector, but I obviously have only been collecting for a very short time, so I collect most of the modern stuff. There's certain stuff where there's no hope. There's no point in me trying to collect all the new 52 stuff, right? It's so long ago, I feel like I should just read those stories so I don't spend
100%.
like forever trying to get.
So there's two ways you can go about it, right? This is what I do, what I've done throughout the years, is that if I want to read something, say Punisher, right from the beginning, instead of going out and finding all the single issues just to read the story, I would buy the trades, and then slowly, I would slowly collect the single issues. Go to comic book fairs, find issue here, go to YouTube, go to eBay, go to here, comic book fairs, whatever it may be. I used to old school, piece of paper with a thing, and now there's apps for that. But that's a good way to do it. So you read the trade, and you buy the single issues later on. And you keep them for your collection. Anytime you want to read that story, you read the trade instead of opening them up, your single issues.
Yeah, so my buddy Stu at Infinity Comics on Instagram basically reads digital, but he buys books every week, straight bag and board into his box.
Yeah.
But he does not like opening his books because he goes, as soon as you open it, there's a spike crease up there. I was like, not me, mate. I treat my books like a lady.
Rough.
Hey dude, what's the difference between these books and those books?
These books and those books? It's time for floppies versus trade paperbacks.
Next topic is going to be trades or trade paperbacks versus floppies versus digital. Now before we get going into that, explain to people who maybe are watching this who know nothing about the world of comic books what a trade paperback is.
So a trade, think of it like a single issue comic book is like an episode in a TV show. And then a trade is
buying a DVD.
It's like buying the season of that TV show.
Very well explained.
So most storylines in comic books that go for 6 issues, a usual trade paperback, usually collects that whole storyline, which is usually 6 issues. So you can think of it like that. It is less collectible but more readable because you get to read the whole story together. Whereas if you're reading the single issues, you have to wait once a month for that story. That's where the collector and the reader come into it.
As far as like when you first come into the world, would you recommend, say for a reader, to go into floppies first or into trades? Because for me, I feel like
it's very individual.
Yeah, it is very individual. But I feel like I went the wrong way. But I mean, because I'm a collector, I still feel like for me, I went the right way. I still haven't read all these classic stories, which I know I should be. But it's because
it's all good, man.
I'm trying to keep up with all the modern stuff. Yeah. Now, like you've got all these comic book people who are into the history. They can tell me everything about the history. But they couldn't tell me the adventures of Rick Grayson, right? All you guys dropped off that story because you didn't like it. That's another thing. Like, even though they like the character, they get upset by the writer, and then they drop the book. So it's just a weird balance.
It is. I think you've gone the right way, to be honest. You collect these single issues, and then
characters that I like.
Characters, and that's a good way to start. So a good way is to have an interest. Read what you want and then have a look what you want to collect, if you want to collect. I think you've done well, to be honest.
Oh.
If we could hug now, I'd probably hug. Alright.
No hugging do you reckon they'll ever hug again?
I don't know.
Not that we've ever really hugged. Alright, so we've talked about trade paperbacks, talked about single issues. What about that digital format? How do you think, like
format?
For maybe
digital format's good in its own way. Everything has its positives.
Again, just for a pure reader, like
a pure reader, that's all it is. Like at the moment, one of my customers, he lost his job, unfortunately, because of the health epidemic, I suppose you can call it. So he's reading digital but he still loves comics. He just can't afford to buy them.
I just find it odd that digital comics are the same price as the physical, which makes it odd because for me, I guess being that old school mentality, I find it hard to hand over money for something that I can't physically hold. And I'm getting more used to it. Like, yes, I pay for cloud storage and I do pay for music subscription services, but it's a weird thing.
Yeah,
to pay the same price. If it was half the price.
Well, look, I've got digital comics, and we're not going to talk about how I got them. I use them to read. That's all I use them for. Instead of opening up a bag to read a story, I read my digitals if I want.
Yeah, but I think you told me that once.
So I suppose, look, digital has its uses, 100%. I've always said this, it's a lifestyle choice, right? If I live in an apartment and I have no room to store my new comics, because you might already have comics, if I have no room to store more comics, digital is a way to go, because if you want to keep up with current storylines, so on and so forth, because it's stored digitally. Or some people want to read them on the way to work, on the train or something, but they don't want to carry their books, of course, so you read them digitally, on a tablet or on your phone, whatever. Digital, whatever, physical, it all comes down to lifestyle choices.
I'm pretty sure you mentioned to me a while ago, you'll reread the classic stories of books you've already bought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you want to reread them, so you're going to reread them digitally to avoid opening your precious...
So basically they're scans. They're not digital fabrication. There's like a scan of an old comic book.
I must say that
people scan.
Sometimes those digital, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, of course.
It looks better than the paper.
Yeah, look, like I said, it all comes down to lifestyle choice. I'll give me physical any day, 100%. And, it supports the industry. That's one thing. But it's good to have choice though. There's nothing wrong with having choice.
I notice when new customers walk into your store. I was a new customer at your store once, for example, at the old shop, and I remember coming in for the first time, and you had your...
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Those were the days when we could stand closer to each other, shake hands.
Yeah. I grabbed the bat dong straight off the shelf and
bat
got the shop price. I called you that day because at the time, on my days off, every day off, I would go to a different comic shop. I would try to just go to different comic shops all the time and just do my thing. I had no idea how to do this, right? It was the day Batman Damned came out. I was really excited for Batman Damned, and I didn't know, this is pre-Bat Dong, right? I didn't jump on no train. So I called up Mark because that day I happened to Google comic book shops. I'd done that every week for 4 weeks straight, and for the first time, Big City Comics came up, and I was like, it was on Brunswick Street. I was like, how do I not know about a comic shop on Brunswick Street? And I called you and I said, hey.
I was in new comic book mode.
Yeah,
as you've seen before here.
This literally may never have happened if he'd never answered that call. Like, that's no joke, I never thought about that. But he answered the call well before he opened, and I said, hey man, just wondering if you put your new releases out as soon as you open, because all the other stores don't do it. They put it out late in the afternoon. And he said, yeah man, as soon as we open at 12. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna come in. So I went in because I wanted Batman Damned. I walk in, you've got all your crew and you're all talking about your comic book shop stuff, and I was like, it's very intimidating walking into a shop of nerds who know what they're talking about, and then here comes the noob strolling in, like, right?
Was it really, were we intimidating?
You weren't intimidating, but as intimidating as you're gonna see me and start inviting me into this conversation that I know nothing about.
Did I invite you?
No, you didn't. No, so but here's the thing. So I'm looking around and you gave me the up and down, you're like, who's this dude? Okay. But I remember you trying to sort of interrogate me a little bit like, oh, where do you shop? And things like that. What are you into?
Hey man, what are you into? Oh, I see you're into Nightwing.
Who's Nightwing?
Oh, you must be new to comics.
Yeah man, where do I start? When people first come into your shop, I do notice that you often ask them, if they're new to it and what they're into. So obviously for me, I had no idea where to start. I had no one holding my hand really, so I just jumped straight into superheroes when I realized now that I think I'd be really into indie books. I noticed you ask people, are you into superheroes? Are you into science fiction? Are you into horror? And all that sort of stuff. So I guess for people who aren't necessarily into just superheroes, I wanted to recommend a book from each of those genres.
I never assumed that they're into superheroes. Some people come in, they want to read comics, and they say, yeah, I want to read superheroes. I love the Marvel films. What character do you like from Marvel?
So what would be the book you recommend for the superhero people again?
It depends what superheroes they're into, yes? Are you into Batman? Now, Batman's a really good go-to character.
Who isn't into Batman?
That's right, because Batman is so diverse, man. Like, he's so diverse. Horror, crime, superhero. You can get anything out of that guy. Right? And there's so many stories out there of Batman.
So if you had to pick one, for some noob who walks in, I like Batman.
Bang, I'd go Batman, so recommend a Batman story. I wouldn't give him one, man. I'd give him a couple, you have to. Do you want more superhero, do you want more crime, or do you want more horror? Yeah.
What are those two?
Hush would be a first go-to.
What?
Hush. Because it's got everything. It's got all those 3 genres.
I better read this Hush book.
Hush has got all 3 genres, and then Black Mirror would be, and then you could try a classic if you love the Joker, Killing Joke,
Killing Joke's great.
Or I could go to Batman, the Dark Knight Returns, or Year One. You know, Batman has so many good stories. That would be my first go-to. If it was Marvel, they said, nah, I love the Marvel movies. Again, I'd find out what movie they liked, what character they liked from that movie series. Obviously, Infinity Gauntlet is one of the most, when the movie came out.
I watched a video of someone who sort of read, I think it was Super Russ. So shout out to you, Super Russ, if it was you. I'm pretty sure it was you. He did a little breakdown because he bought the Infinity Gauntlet. I'm pretty sure it was him. And I was shocked because he showed some of the art and stuff in it. I was shocked how different it was from the movie.
Yeah.
It was like it was a flip, man. I was like, whoa.
So that's why they came out and said, you know, in the movie universe, it's the MCU, you know?
Yeah.
The Marvel Universe movie side. And that's good. And they did a good thing. They get the general public. But source material is very important. That's what Marvel have done really well. They look at the source material, they look at what they can put on screen, so on and so forth. There's indie superheroes as well. So it really depends on, people might not want to read Batman or Superman or Spider-Man or Hulk. So, you know, some Bloodshot, or even, you know, from some Robert Kirkman's Invincible, Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer.
Okay.
You know, there's so many indie superheroes out there. You know, even, you know, like Grant Morrison's done his own universe. You know, Mark Miller has done his great. Mark Miller's got his own superhero universe. So when people say I go for the writers, you know, over the characters, that's sometimes only a certain type of writer can create their own superhero universe. And the challenge is not to do what's come before. For 80 years now, we've had the Supermans and the Batmans and the Spider-Mans, and so you got to try and do something different. Only a certain type of creator can create his own superhero, you know, and they're the good writers, and they're the ones that last for a very long time in the industry. Stan Lee is the king. You know, he created his own superhero universe. Who can you can't go past that guy. When you look at all these other creators who create their own superhero universe, they look at what Batman and Superman and Spider-Man don't do for the industry. A lot of them write about the repercussions of being a superhero, you know, the human element of it, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's completely different. There's a lot of choice. Whenever they say I'm into superheroes, I always give them that choice as well.
So non-superhero books that you would recommend, and what type of genres do you normally recommend if they're not superheroes?
Horror's a big thing at the moment. Horror books are absolutely blowing up.
Yeah, the Joe Hill stuff is.
Sorry?
All the Joe Hill.
Yes, so, you know, they're not out in trade yet. For the new reader who comes in the door, I always recommend a trade. It whets their appetite. If they read that and they like reading comic, because some people might like the idea of reading comics, but when it comes down to reading it, they might not like it. I want to find a trade for them that I know that they will enjoy.
Yeah, because it is difficult to, again, like, I guess just going back to the whole single issue thing. For me, starting in comics, it's hard for me to walk up to a book and be like, oh, this is the first book I'm going to buy, Captain Marvel issue 15. And it's like, well, what happened in the 14 issue before this?
That's correct.
I need to start from the beginning.
Correct.
And also, I find it much easier to knock out a bunch of issues, which is what I've been doing recently. Is I let the issues build up, so I can knock out a big chunk of it. It's just stays.
See, where I read, everyone reads different. So where I read, which I've said to you before, I read in order of release.
Yeah.
So whenever it gets released, I put it in my pile in that order, and that's how I read it.
That's crazy.
And I used to read it like what you do, and I just couldn't keep up. This is when I opened the store. I kept on reading that way, and I said, no, I can't do it. I can't keep up. So I started a different way of reading, and it works for me now. People are loving horror. Crime is a good one.
Well, what's the horror book you recommend?
Oh man, Jeff Lemire's Gideon Falls, Ice Cream Man.
Horror Ice Cream Man.
Yeah, man, creepy, yes. And a classic from Snyder, Witches.
I was gonna say, I've got one for you, Witches, but this guy. Yeah,
this is my horror section, and one of the greatest books I'm reading at the moment, which I'm loving, and the genre doesn't really exist. There's not a lot of it anyway, which is sci-fi horror. Out of Darkness, great book. From the creator of, one of the creators of Truth. So really good book. Kirkman's Walking Dead, that really kicked off a lot of that stuff. Sci-fi is another good one that they love. My shelf is always distributed in different ways. You know, dystopian, utopian futures, you know, space sci-fi, you know, science sci-fi. And I try to get as much information out of that person to recommend what I can. And then I pull out some stuff out of the shelf and then I'll let them go at it. Yeah. You know, and I'll leave them alone.
What happens if someone comes in, like, some girl comes in and is like, I like romance novels.
I have romance books too.
Yeah, to recommend one of those.
Yeah, man, Snot Girl.
Oh, really?
Book, yeah,
I've got issue 1 of Snuck Girl.
Great book.
I don't know why I bought it. I haven't read it, I've got it.
Saga's basically a romance book, man, with drama. It's a great series. Brian K. Vaughan, Why the Last Man. I mean, don't even get me started. One of the things that I love to do when I was in Fitzroy, and I continue it here, is I introduce people to the store. You know, like I give them a short tour. You know, this is this section, this is that section. You know.
And one thing I do recommend, and it's something that you tried to get me on for a long time, but I just like doing things my way, so it took me a while to get on board.
Which is true.
Once you get into it, do yourself a favor, get yourself on that pull list.
Standing order.
For the longest time, you kept saying to me, you know, you can put a standing order through, so I have these things aside for you. And I was like, no.
Once I determine a customer what he's into, whether it's be trades or single issue, I always say, are you on a standing order somewhere? Surprisingly, a lot of people say, like yourself, what's a standing order? What do you mean? It's a pull list is the best thing you can ever do for yourself and for the comic book guy.
And we need to support our local comic shops, right?
Local comic shop.
That's right. All right, and that is our episode for today. The first episode of New Beginnings.
The first episode.
That's right. Nothing's really going to change as far as format-wise, apart from the name. So I just figured with the New 50 Noob being, you know, take off the New 52, it was just clever to only have 52 episodes, right?
It's not clever if you have to tell everyone that it's clever.
We're gonna cut that bit out. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to give the video a like if you did enjoy this, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Mark, I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. Everyone's worried about you, mate. Everyone obviously is concerned for the future of Big City Comics. So
Well, here in Australia, it's a bit stressful because we can't get any shipments from anything. So from Diamond, as in which means no trades either. It is what it is, and we just got to ride it through. And good news, last week that May 20th, they're looking at a May 20th to restart distribution, May 20th. But good news for everyone.
Wicked. Follow us on our social medias at Big City Comics, on Instagram at the New 50 Noob. And any last words, Mark, before we go?
Lady Fantastic, how you doing?
Keep it simple, guys. Say bye, Mark.
Bye, Mark.